think I got it.
Okay, guys, welcome to another episode of We Got Your Mail. This is Saturday. It's the weekend. We are here to read out your comments and questions that you've submitted to us.
First up, we got a question from pop.culture.vulture on Instagram saying a non-COVID based question because let's face it, COVID talk is pretty tedious. Thank you, pop.culture.vulture. What's your favorite media, book, video game, comic, etc. that hasn't been made into a film but should? And who would you want to see cast and or direct? Mine would be the video game Horizon Zero Dawn with Zendaya Coleman as Aloy and directed by Denis Villeneuve. Interesting. Dream collabs, dream projects you haven't seen yet. Do you have one? Did something leap to mind?
When I read this question, the first thing that popped into my head was a graphic novel that I read years ago that I think I still have here in this house somewhere. It's a book called Girls. And it is a comic book about a small town guy who's just a regular average dude. Nothing really special about this guy in this small town. But the town is visited by an alien life form that crash lands in the center of the town and creates this force field around the whole city. Like kind of like that TV show, was it Dome, where there was like a force field around the whole city. And in this nobody can get in, nobody can get out. You can't even see inside the dome. It's totally fogged out, and people are completely cut off. Electricity and all that stuff still works, but you just can't escape. And you're trapped in this city with this alien being who is a beautiful woman. She can't speak, and she's just there. And when she runs into any man, she is immediately sexually attracted to them and wants to mate immediately. That's all she wants. And the moment she has sex, she lays an egg. And then another her comes out of that egg, who then goes off looking for another man to mate with. And you kind of can see where it goes from there. And then the whole graphic novel was great. I would love to see that become a movie, or at least a TV series on like Netflix or Hulu or something, because that story, it was on Image Comics. It's not a Marvel or DC comic. It was Image Comics. It was a great story, because at first I thought I was just being a stupid guy, was like, ooh, who's gonna see some naked girls and some guys are gonna get it on these pages. This is gonna be great. But it got deep, how seemingly happily married men were like, this is a oasis, a fantasy. We've been given this blessing, get away from these nagging wives, and we got this beautiful situation. And then these women are feeling threatened because when they introduce themselves to a man, they're instantly sexually attracted. When they see any female, they turn vicious. I mean, brutal. They go for the eyes, the throat. They eliminate the threat instantly. So the women in town have to band together, and it got very political. I mean, there was some things going on, like how the women were like, women shooting their husbands in the private parts to keep them in check, kind of a thing. It was a very, very deep story. So I've had that in the chamber for a long, long time. So if I was to pick, I can't think of a director, any great director. I don't know, Steven Spielberg. I don't know, he would never do it. But the Girls, that's my fantasy story that I want to see come to the big screen or to the small screen. That seems like something that has. And I even know the actress that should play it. It should be Megan Fox, I believe is her name. Megan.
Okay, I can see that.
Because when I saw the picture, I'll have to find the picture and share it with you. And I'll display it here on the screen. But when I saw the cover of that comic book, that's who should. And then she was, this was a little bit after Transformers at the time too, so it was like she was the it girl. But that's exactly who it looked like to me. But what about you? Is there a book or comic book like me, or anything that you feel like, or a video game that needs to be a movie or a TV show like today?
Nothing like I was racking my brain because it's a great question, and I couldn't really think of anything. And then I thought there's actually a play that I would say would probably be my vote. there's this play by Martin McDonagh called The Lieutenant of Inishmore. And Martin McDonagh wrote and directed like In Bruges and most recently 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So super talented maker as well. But so he wrote this play called The Lieutenant of Inishmore. It's this super dark comedy, like really violent, really gory, about this guy. It's set in Ireland during like the Troubles, like the Irish like liberation movement, and he's too violent for the IRA. Like he's too violent for these like terrorist groups. Like he's this absolute violent nutcase. And it's hysterically funny. It's just this wild ride of a play. And I would be hesitant of like, could this be pulled off as a movie? But something like In Bruges, that's such a solid, dark comedy. It really makes me feel like, yeah, just get Martin McDonagh to adapt this for film. And I actually saw Chris Pine in the lead role, and he was so good. Like really just like elevated. This was like right after the first Star Trek came out, and it was like, oh, this guy's good. Like he's not just like a charming leading man movie star. He's a good actor.
Chris
so
Pine's
honestly, I think
a dark comedy. That's it. I would like that. I think that would.
He was hysterical. Just as this absolute like bloodthirsty maniac. Like the whole thing kicks off because like his cat dies, and he just goes on like a rampage. It's so funny, and like I think if you could translate that well with him in the lead, it could be something, because it was magical on stage, and it's one of those things I would love to capture.
Would work better as a movie or a series? What do you think, or either?
I mean, I feel like because it already works so well as like a 2-hour play, I'd be curious to see it adapted. Yeah, but maybe like a mini series. I don't know if I'd want seasons upon seasons of that level of crazy.
You don't
like
want not a Dexter-like kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, but like one really tight, like 4 to 6. If McDonagh felt like he had that, like he would have to write it, I feel like. But if he really felt like, oh, I could expand this out, I think. Well, and there are more in that, because there's the Lieutenant of Inishmore, there's the Cripple of Inishmon, which is like a different guy. But anyways, that would probably be my vote, would be that play with that specific actor, because he's so good. And I would love to see him stretch his wings more as an actor, because I think he really does have the chops to do that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Now you got me curious about it. Now I'll definitely make that movie happen now, because with Chris Pratt, it's not Chris Pratt, Chris Pine. That would, or one of the Chris's, Chris Pine.
My top Chris of like the Hollywood Chris's, I always go Pine, and I feel like that's a controversial but correct take.
You pine for the pine. Okay. Well, you can't go wrong with a Chris. A little dab will do you. All right, what we got next?
Up next, we got Angela Lucht on YouTube saying, please watch Being Human UK. It came out in 2009 before Being Human USA. The UK show has 5 seasons, but season 1 only got 6 episodes. Don't start with the pilot episode, start with the first episode. It's very funny, little dark, and has great acting. Got a recommendation.
It's funny that that Angela says that, because I remember trying to watch the UK version of that show. I love the US version of it, and I've been trying to get into more British shows. So I tried to watch Being Human, and I tried to watch the first episode, and that was the pilot episode, and I was like, no, it's not as good as the US version. So I stopped right there on the first episode, the pilot. So I'm glad that I'm okay. So it makes sense. Don't watch the pilot. Start with episode 1. Okay, I will try to give it a chance again. Have you ever seen Being Human?
I haven't. No, I'll have to check it out. I generally can get pretty on board for British stuff. So
I think we talked about it before. It's a sci-fi with a vampire whose roommate is a werewolf, and
great concept.
And I thought, this is stupid, but when you see how they got together, accidentally bumped into each other the way they did, it makes sense. And then the house happens to be haunted, but it works very good. I love that show, and I recommend it. the U.S. version. Check out the U.S. version, but or you know what? Check out the British version. Maybe I'll love the British version more.
Skip
Let's
that part.
see. And skip that
All
part.
right. Up next, we got Emma Potts on Instagram asking, when did you work in Iraq? What were you doing there? I'm assuming this one's for you.
Yeah, Amy, when did you work?
Not an open writing prompt for me.
Well, I'm gonna be like a grandpa now. I'm gonna feel my age.
It was the summer of '84. Like what?
It was summer. It was July 3rd, 2004, when I went over. So was it 2004? Yeah, 2004. It was we were still in the middle of the whole thing after the aftermath of what was going on 9/11. I remember my friend Jason, we worked at an apartment complex, and he had a resident there that said, if you ever really you ready to make some real money, let me know. I can send you overseas. And we didn't take it seriously. But she was a recruiter for Halliburton, KBR, and she said, well, I'll get you in over there, but I'll make sure to give you the job that's the safest or the most fun, which is called MWR, Morale, Welfare, Recreation, where you're in charge of all the fun stuff for the military over there, whether it's gyms or recreation centers, video games, whatever you can get in to just help the soldiers take their minds off of it. And that was the department that she got me hired under. And I was working there from 2004 to 2010. And I worked at 30 minutes away from Baghdad. It was a little air base called Al Assad. They even had Saddam Hussein had a drive-in theater there at that air it was an air base that the U.S. military came in, took over. They took it over, built a perimeter around, and set up a bunch of shops and turned it into a booming little town. They had a movie theater. It had a drive-in movie theater. It had there was a place in Baghdad that was built just for his grandkids, that had like a Hanna-Barbera kind of a theme park, kind of a land there for his kids. And it was like a lot of weird stuff that was there that this guy just had set up for it was like Planet Look at Me kind of it was weird, but it was mostly just mostly just a little town that we worked in, where the military was doing their thing inside and outside the wire. But my department was morale, welfare, recreation, mostly. And me, I'm the movie guy, so I was lucky to get a facility that had like a movie theater room, where they had a big screen TV. They had a projector, and they built like little stadium seating with flip chairs, and so they tried to make it like close as possible. So I was in charge of procurement and materials control. So I would buy little things for my facility, where I had like a marquee above the door, or I could put the names of the movies I was about to play. I got a flat screen TV with the DVD player that I put out in front of the door, where I recorded movie trailers. I would have to go on YouTube and try to pull a bunch of the latest trailers and have them playing on a loop. And right next to a popcorn machine, I tried to deck that thing out and make it like as authentic as possible. And it was a lot of fun. I got pictures. I'll probably, if I find them, I'll display them as I did my monologue. But yeah, that was what I did for about 6 years out there in Iraq, as bombs would come in every now and then, and things happen. So, but that was it.
My made-up story about Iraq now.
Oh yeah, go for it. If you like it, I love it.
It was the summer of '03, and no, I got nothing. All right. That's super interesting though. Super cool. Always those things where I'm like, oh yeah, someone has to go do those things. Oh, yeah. The older I get, the more it's like everybody's a job. Everything is a job, and somebody is getting paid to do it.
Oh yeah, I did invest in the local currency too. Like we took over their country, and then we helped them reestablish it, and they have their own money. The theory was, like, because it's happened before in other countries, that once a country goes through something like that, and then they reestablish their banking system, that their money goes from being valueless to being worth, like, I don't know, 10 cents to our dollar, or 20 cents to our dollar, or dollar for dollar, or me. So yeah, a bunch of us out there, soldiers and contractors, we bought a bunch of their currency, and we're sitting on it, hoping that the stock market or the economy will recognize it as valuable someday, and then my my undisclosed amount of Iraqi dinars will one day be turned over to my local bank, and you might not see much of me here on Talking Through the Media, or you might see too much of me because I might just deck this thing, fly you and the family out here to Houston, or maybe build a studio out there. And trust me, a lot of things are gonna happen. A lot of things.
All right, good times. Up next, we have from Kyoki86 on the proof Rotten Tomatoes is biased video. I think this video needs a revisit, especially since Rotten Tomatoes reviewers and its algorithm has been exposed to favor Disney and its movies. With Disney power to keep a film percentage from dropping even lower with the new Star Wars and Captain Marvel. There's a clear bias now. We see it, you saw it. Especially since most of the Marvel movies, besides Iron Man 1 and Winter Soldier still being the best movies, everything else should hold a lot lower ratings based on their reviews of the DCEU films. I think what they were doing was bashing the DCEU so it couldn't take off because it would threaten their main competition, which is Disney. So they wanted the DCEU gone completely. That was the goal. Looks like Warner and AT&T saw this, correctly reversed course, and are now going back to what they originally planned. Now we are getting the Snyder Cut.
Oh, I'm sure you're gonna let me take the lead on this because I know comic book movies aren't your jam. So what?
There's just a lot to unpack.
Oh, yeah, this is a mouthful now, and I thought about like only addressing one of his things in this comment rant, but this is a video I did coming from way back, and I don't know if he only saw my obvious clickbait title and was like, "This guy gets it. Let me tell him how much I agree with him, and we're gonna talk about this on this obvious copy and paste." Or maybe this was his actual thumbs doing the work. But Kyoki, oh dude, I don't think you saw my video because okay, what do I have to address? Okay, I don't agree with you on the whole Rotten Tomatoes being biased thing with their algorithm. Okay, for you guys who don't know, this is how Rotten Tomatoes works. They are just that. They're an algorithm. Rotten Tomatoes there's not a guy, and my name is Bill Rotten Tomato, and I'm going to write this review, and I hate this movie that you love, or I love this movie that you hate. That's not what's going on. Okay, Rotten Tomatoes, they're just a company who acknowledges a certain amount of people are certified, contributors and critics that they give a critic platform for their website, and they get regular reviews from like regular viewers like you and me. And my goal is to one day become a certified Rotten Tomato reviewer. That's my dream. That's my goal. And I've been denied 3 times. So what they do is they receive their I'm telling you, the 17th time. But what they do is they receive their reviews from a critic, and if let's say they're giving it a great review or a bad review, that all they're doing is they're just adding up and averaging the amount of good reviews and bad reviews that they do. It's not Rotten Tomatoes that's giving you the bad review. They're just averaging out from the Huffington Post, this guy who actually his main job is at this blog or that other blog. All they're doing is just recognizing them and saying, hey, John Campea from the John Campea Show, he said this movie sucked. And this guy over here that we also recognize who works at wallstreet.com, whatever the website is for movies, he said it was good. And they average each other out. That's all that Rotten Tomatoes does. They don't have a finger on the scale. They don't. So this whole thing about Disney trying to use their superpowers to make their movies, stay, highly rated. It's not happening. Here's what's happening, what you're probably talking about. You can have a DCEU movie, a Superman or a Batman movie, and let's say 1,000 critics get submit their reviews into Rotten Tomatoes, and out of that 1,000, 600 loved it, 400 hated it, which would mean that it's going to get a 60% score. Now, you have a Marvel movie now let me reverse that. That DC movie, 600 people hated it, 400 people liked it, which is going to have a 40% approval rating. And then you have a Marvel movie where 10 people saw it and 9 people loved it, 1 person hated it. Now, technically, more people loved that or said that they loved that DC movie. Like 400 people loved that DC movie, but it got a 40% score. But this Marvel movie, only 10 people saw it. 9 people liked it. 1 person hated it, but it got a 90. That's how math works. It's an average. That's it. That's how Rotten Tomatoes works. If you're upset with Disney, what you need to be is you need to probably ask the question of why aren't these critics submitting their reviews in more or something like that, or whatever the situation is. But it's not based on what I mean. If it makes sense, based on what I'm talking about here, like you are you familiar with like Rotten Tomato? Do you know how their algorithm or work? Have you ever looked that up or even cared about?
Of course.
The nerds about how they how they get all butthurt when their favorite movie gets a bad review, and it's all Rotten Tomatoes' fault. Are you? How do you feel about that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, they compile. It's a really useful tool if you're trying to figure out if you want to see something just to get a generalized. It's not a perfect system. There's the math thing you're talking about. Half the time, if you actually look at Rotten Tomatoes, some of their fresh reviews will be like, kind of boring and this and that, but so and so's cute in it, and they're like fresh. Like, what that?
That
was a fresh
was fresh.
Like, sometimes very tentative reviews get fresh, or fairly positive reviews get raw. So it's not a perfect system. It's just a tool to help figure out sort of generally what's the vibe here. So I don't understand half the things they said. I'll be.
Most of the comments that I got on that video were people just, that whole conspiracy, like Captain Marvel. Yeah. Walt Disney paid for those tickets. As those theaters were empty, they didn't really make $1 billion. It's like Disney doesn't need to do that. That's not even in their. That's not how billionaires make money. Like, what would that benefit? I'm going to spend $1 billion to make $1 billion. You might as well. Why would you want to wash your money and make it go all through that system to get like 70% of that money back when you could just hold on to it and keep it? Because if Disney was funneling money and buying movie tickets, they would only get like 70% of that money back, because a third of it is going to go to the movie theaters. Why would Disney do that? That they're in the business of taking your money, not wasting theirs. It's always Captain Marvel. It's always Brie Larson. If you go to the history of, do this. If you ever want to do some digging, if you ever want to stalk me up real good, Amy, type in T3 Media's Brie Larson and see all the topics of that whole thing where everybody just bashed on her for no reason. I mean, I'm not surprised that he brought up Captain Marvel. Let's be honest, Kiyoki. That's what this is really about, isn't it? It's Brie Larson, isn't it? You don't like Brie Larson, and you wanted to just let me know. I don't think it's really about Rotten Tomatoes, but who knows?
All right, and we got our last. We got your mail of the week. Storm Shadow on YouTube asked, who should play Batwoman? Now that we got our Batwoman stepping down, who do you think should take up the mantle?
And you said you don't watch this show, so I've done a bit
of research just in light of everything that's been going down, but I'd be curious to hear
any of the names that were the names. A lot of it was funny how a lot of what's her name from I was about to say Elysium, but she I'm gonna go crazy if I don't look this. So she was in Suicide Squad and I'm surprised that her name was even mentioned. I'm gonna let this buffer, but the name that came up that was not Margot Robbie, Cara. How do you say her name? Cara Delevingne. Yeah, her name came up as I'm like, dude, she's not coming to the CW to do a TV show. No, I'm sorry.
No,
let me go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I always kind of hate these discussions because it's like, yeah, there are cool casting choices you can make, But honestly, from what I do know about this show, a big part of it is that she's, you know, maybe the first major LGBT superhero. It's like, get an unknown talent from that community. Like, do you need talented lesbian actresses? Because I know a ton of them who are not getting the work they deserve. Like, I just always think these are such a cool opportunity to highlight and give that career, you know, kick off to someone who deserves it, who's really talented, who is part of a community that's not seeing enough representation. So that's kind of what I would.
Do you think it's an insult nowadays, I guess, in today's environment, if they didn't get somebody who was a lesbian or bi to play the character?
Yes.
Do you think
in
they
this
have
case,
to?
Because
I'm probably going to agree.
Yeah, I think that representation is so important. And I think from what I've heard, it's part of the show. It's part of the character. I've had this discussion with a lot of people because I'm always curious because I'm, you know, a straight cisgendered woman. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe, you know, not gender identity as much. That's a little more you can just cast. But I'm like, okay, can I play a lesbian or bisexual character or pansexual character? You know, is that offensive if I'm playing outside of my sexual orientation? Because it's not something you can see. It's not something anyone would know just meeting me.
Right.
And it's a nuanced topic, but one answer I really liked from a friend of mine was, you can play a character who happens to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
You should not be in something that is about the gay LGBT experience, because that's not your story to tell. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. And I think the representation of having a lesbian superhero is so big that it would be a slap in the face to not give that platform to someone in that community.
I agree.
Opinion. I'm sure there are people, you know, thinking more eloquently.
I can see that to a certain extent only because of the fact that obviously, like, transgender people and whatnot are purposely like shunned, and they're not given roles in it, even if they're not going for a role that's for, you know, for that topic matter or anything like that. So I can agree with, but I am a firm believer that, I mean, it is acting. I mean, can a person who has working legs, I've heard the crazy thing I heard was that they should have gotten a guy who really can't walk to play that character in that wheelchair. I'm like, okay, but
I don't know. I think there's an argument to be made for that, though, because again, there are plenty of, you know, disabled actors who aren't getting those roles.
Yeah, exactly. And then I see that argument, but we're talking about let me give a better example. Like, if a Warner Bros., if we're talking about an independent film or something like that, and this looks like this is going to be something that's going to be good and get a lot of attention, maybe an Oscar kind of worthy type of film, go for it and whatnot. But usually the studios that can afford it, like if they can afford Tom Hanks, if I had the choice between, I have $50 million that I can give to this actor and his name is Tom Hanks, or I can get somebody who's unknown and who actually lives this role and whatnot, 9 times out of 10 they're going to go with Tom Hanks because of the fact that he's
I think we need to be holding those companies even more to those standards, because they do have the resources. It's like, you can find the perfect actor for every part. Right. You know, we couldn't find it, but it's not an excuse for Warner Brothers.
But is Tom Hanks not a great worthy, but is Tom Hanks not a worthy actor?
Tom Hanks has had, you know, a long career of never worrying that there's going to be roles for him, and roles that tell his story and his experience. Again, I think if it was less of a landmark thing, I wouldn't be as concerned that they cast an actress from that community. But I do think it's so big to have that it would be a little slap in the face to not do it.
I agree.
And you definitely have the resources to reach out to those communities and find the right actress for this role.
I definitely agree that they should always reach out, and they should know where, if this story is about this subject matter, definitely get it from people who live the life and whatnot. But that's
do you have an actress You watch the show more than I do. Do you have an actress you'd want to see take over for the second season?
Going back to that specific topic, that show, I thought of a bunch of different actresses that I could have thought of, and then when I read one person's post, it just made so much sense. So the Batwoman character, and I think we talked about this before, the Batwoman character has a sister on the show who's the villain, and obviously they're twins, but they're not identical twins. So now that Ruby Rose has stepped down, everybody's thinking, okay, we can replace her with another person who could play her non-identical twin. One person was like, why not just make them identical twins? Let's just pretend like Ruby Rose. I mean, everything that happened, but why don't you just have that character playing the villain, then now play the star? Because in a recent episode, she played there was a part where she played a good version of herself. She's insane, and then she had to play a what if kind of a character version of herself where she was totally normal and whatnot. So she's shown that she's played insane, she's played normal, she's played tough, she's played sweet, she's played vulnerable. She has shown a lot of range. So when they said that, I forgot her name, I'd have to look it up, but the woman who plays Alice on the TV show, the villain on Batwoman, that's who I would pick as the replacement. I think her name Rachel Scarston. She plays Beth Kane. I don't know now if she's not a member of the LGBT community. Okay, well then, like I said, I see the point, because that was the reason why they got Ruby Rose. One of the reasons why they got Ruby Rose, and so if they want to stay on that path, then yeah. If she's not a member of that, then if they want to stay on that path, then fine. But as far as convenience, I think that kind of solves the problem right there. It is her twin sister. So, but that's just me. But let's go, guys. Let us know what you guys think about it. Oh, go ahead. What's that?
I was just gonna say, I'm sure some showrunners lying awake at night pondering this very same question with us. So
I'm sure she should be doing her manager should be like, does my client get a second paycheck? Let me know all of your thoughts, comments below, and maybe we'll talk about it some more on We Got Your Mail or again on Why Is That Trend. But we've talked about this topic a lot, so maybe we won't. But that's the show, guys. I appreciate you, Amy, for sticking with me on another Saturday for We Got Your Mail. And guys, if you want to submit a question to us, do it right here at T3 Medias on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the good stuff. And we will read your questions, comments, and concerns, your constructive criticism about my t-shirt and how Amy always outshines me on this show every week, because she just has that lovable glow about her, and just, it's just the way it is. But enjoy this. I'm glad you guys stuck around with us, guys. Amy, if you don't mind, one more time telling the people where they can find you online if they want to reach out to you.
Absolutely. I am at amy.n.newman on the Instagrams. I am at amy_n_Newman. I couldn't get them the same for both. It was terrible. I'm that one on Twitter. Search for Amy Newman on things. You'll probably find me. I don't have a lot going on right now, so come say hi.
Trust me, guys, Amy has got it going on. She does. And you can find me, Chris Fagan Chris Fagan 1980 on Twitter and Instagram, or you can @ me at T3 Medias, and I'll send your questions, comments, concerns, and just let me know what you guys are always thinking. We'll read them right here on the show, and I appreciate you guys. And until next time, guys, hey, be good to each other out there. All right? Good.
Yes, you have to just throw physics and everything out of the window, and you definitely have to turn the brain off. It's like what this guy said earlier. He said it's pretty much like a Michael Bay movie, but a little bit better than a Michael Bay movie.
Soft spot.
Exactly.
I'm gonna reach over all this.